again, thank our participants, our panelists who are here, who have speaking roles, and those who are part of the community who are attending by Zoom. We've got about 30. Thank you so much. And I'm going to move us into, thank you so much.
Thank you. In order to provide language access, we will be providing simultaneous bidirectional interpretation in English and Spanish. If you are bilingual, you don't have to click anything. If you are not bilingual in English and Spanish, you will have to select your language in order to hear the interpretation. If you are on a laptop or desktop, you will see a globe at the bottom right of your screen. Please click on the globe icon that says interpretation and select English. If you are on an iPad or a similar device, locate the three-dot menu and select language interpretation, then select English. When it's your turn to speak, please remember to be loud and clear and speak at a moderate pace, as the interpreter will be interpreting simultaneously into the other language. Esta reunión contará con interpretación simultánea bidireccional en inglés y en español. Si usted es bilingüe, no tiene que presionar nada. Si usted no es bilingüe, tendrá que elegir su idioma para escuchar la interpretación. Si está usando una computadora, verá un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla a la derecha en forma de globo que dice Interpretation, interpretación. Haga clic ahí y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está usando un iPad o dispositivo parecido, localice el menú de 3 puntos, haga clic en Language Interpretation, interpretación de idiomas, y elija español, Spanish. Cuando sea su turno de hablar, por favor recuerde hablar con voz fuerte y clara y a un paso moderado, ya que la intérprete estará interpretando simultáneamente al otro idioma. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're moving on to reading out of closed session. I'm happy to reporting out that on item B1, in the case of OAH, case number, it's a long number, 202-003-0998, the board accepted the settlement agreement of $29,000. The motion was made by Ms. Sims-Moten and seconded by Ms. Ford and passed unanimously. In item B2, a motion was made to accept the recommendation for the appointment of Annalise Alvarez as assistant principal of San Marcos High School. The motion was made by Ms. Ford, seconded by Ms. Munoz, and the vote was unanimous. So congratulations to Ms. Alvarez. Okay, thanks everybody. And moving on here to the superintendent's report, item 5. Mr. Matsuoka.
Yes, we have the pleasure of meeting 3 leaders that the board has appointed over the last couple meetings. So we'll be introducing to you the future principal of Santa Barbara Junior High, the next principal of Washington Elementary, and an elementary assistant principal for Washington and Franklin. So first, let's begin with James Koenig. And if part of our team will now invite him to join the live webinar side of this. I'll give some brief introductions of James. James comes to us from Oxnard Union High School District. He is a director of student services there. He has served as a principal of an alternative school for the county. He's a history teacher by background. He can correct me if I missed it. Long secondary background. It's also noteworthy that he is biliterate in Spanish, which was a quality that we really sought for in Santa Barbara Junior High. So I met James online on Zoom, so we actually haven't met physically in person, but I really look forward to the work that he's going to do for Santa Barbara Junior High. And James is somewhere in the Zoom space, so I'm going to invite James to introduce himself and greet the board.
Good evening, Board President, members of the board, Superintendent Matsuoka, and administrative staff. I want to begin by truly thanking you, the board and staff, for this assignment. It really is my honor and privilege to be the new principal of Santa Barbara Junior High School. I've had nothing but positive experiences and warm welcomes in every experience. To give you a bit of background, a little bit more detail, my family and I presently live in Camarillo. I've lived in Ventura County since I was 14, moved up from there from San Fernando Valley. I am happily married for 17 years. My wife is a stay-at-home mom and homeschools our son, our youngest child, I'm the father of two. My 13-year-old son, is homeschooling, completing his last year of 8th grade, and will begin high school next year. So we're going into that venture. My daughter, and with that, my wife's excited because she'll be able to retire from being homeschool teacher. So she's looking forward to that. My daughter is 26. I married into a family, just a bit of background. She graduated from UCLA and a current resident of Santa Barbara. My family and I have visited the area many times. We enjoy the wonderful beaches. We've wandered the famous downtown and camped for years off Highway 154 off Paradise Road. I've been in education, I believe this has been mentioned, for roughly 17 years. I began in education teaching high school social science and Spanish, as well as ESL in the evenings. I later served as a dean and as assistant principal in both alternative and comprehensive sites. And I was fortunate to be the principal of 2 county schools that ran a middle school and high school program. During those 5 years, I significantly improved campus climate, which led to improved student performance and recognition as national demonstration sites for positive interventions. Being principal truly remains one of the proudest times of my administrative career. As a director, I continue to pursue my passion for delivering programs to serve the needs of students. I've developed and implemented district-wide positive interventions and multi-tiered systems of support, which have also led to significant reduction in discipline and positive outcomes for students. As I mentioned earlier, I am passionate about directly serving students and staff. It was clear to me I wanted this position. Throughout the interview process and in my interactions with Santa Barbara Unified School District, it was a natural fit, and I've had only positive experiences with the district and site staff. And I'll reiterate that, but that's truly been my experience. I look forward to serving the community of Santa Barbara during this pandemic, and as we social distance, I will work alongside staff to see the school through these uncharted waters. I will be applying an open, flexible, and creative approach as we face these new challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, our next person to welcome is actually known to the board. Denise Granger was recognized a year ago as an assistant principal of elementary at Adams in Washington. And so she now has the opportunity to lead one of the 2 schools she was working at, Washington Elementary. We're excited about her future and for the Washington school staff and parents. So welcome to Denise Granger, and she is also ready to send her greetings to the board.
Yes, I am. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Matsuoka and Santa Barbara leadership and community members. I am so pleased to be here exactly 1 year after I was first introduced to the board. And I am even more pleased that it's in this capacity now, because I'm particularly honored to have been chosen as the principal of Washington School, now by people who know me rather than strangers in an interview. And I consider that the greatest compliment. Because you've seen my work and you want more of it. So I'm really excited to be able to continue with the Washington community. And I don't think I could have wished for a better school. And I'm conscious of the privilege of leading this group of people, both staff and parents, and especially the students who've become my community as well. I look forward to a long and productive tenure at this extraordinary school that highly values both academics and emotional health. This week, I actually have the goal of meeting virtually with every single staff member on campus. So both our certificated staff and our classified staff, to connect with them, but also to hear their perspectives and to then make clear what our shared vision is for the school. Because as a leader, I really believe in distributed leadership and hearing from all parties and being able to then strengthen our community there. But one of the themes that I've heard across the meetings I've had so far was the desire to maintain the strong community at Washington. And so I really feel like we have the great opportunity to build on the great things we have, but also build even stronger connections between our different groups of parents and different groups of students. So I think this is a really extraordinary time to have been chosen to lead a school. be it mostly virtually at the moment. But I believe that I will bring a continuity of leadership to Washington that will be critical as we navigate the unknowns of next school year and beyond. So thank you so much for this time and this opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Granger. Welcome. Welcome. Continue. That's wonderful. Mr. Matsuoka, it's still your time.
And our third introduction is also someone that's very known to the board. Ariel Curry has served as a program facilitator in special ed for, I believe it's about 4 or 5 years, has served us really, really well. She aspires to work at a school. And am I frozen or am I still on? Okay, I'm still good. And she knows our entire elementary district. And so when the opportunity came to be an assistant principal, we essentially appointed her to that role at Washington and Franklin. So let's invite Ms. Curry up to the virtual podium to speak to the board.
Thank you. Well, good evening, board members, Superintendent Matsuoka, and Cabinet.
Hey, Ariel, can you turn up your volume?
Yes. Hi, sorry, can you guys hear me now?
A little more.
A little more?
Yep, there we go. Good.
Okay, perfect. Well, good evening, board members, Superintendent Matsuoka, and Cabinet. I'm incredibly excited to be here this evening and even more excited to take on this next role as an educational leader. I particularly want to give my thank you to Superintendent Matsuoka, Dr. Ramirez, and Cabinet for just being incredibly supportive with this transition. I'm incredibly excited to return to a school site and shift gears as an educational leader and taking on a site leadership role. So looking forward to this transition in serving the Washington and Franklin school communities. I've been just well received with warm welcomes from both school communities. I've had the pleasure of participating in Zoom staff meetings with both Washington and Franklin over the past couple of weeks. And I even had the pleasure a couple of weeks ago of joining the Washington school team on their car parade and got to go to the community and see the students and the families and to see the energy and the love that they have for their school. It's clear that they miss being at school and have got a great connection with the staff. And I'm really excited to feed off of that energy and join both communities and continue the great work at each school. I think one of the greatest things that I'm looking forward to in serving both Washington and Franklin is having that opportunity to bridge that gap between these two school communities. There's students at Washington who live on the east side. And so I hope that I can help bring some of the resources that are at both schools and essentially building a greater community at large with both campuses and continue to advance the great work related to intervention and connection with community and families, and really look forward to supporting both schools in that capacity. It's my passion as an educational leader to build inclusive education and access for all students. As a special educator in this district for 11 years, I've learned that what's really important is to really focus in on the individualized needs of students and finding ways to motivate them, to support them with accessing their learning in a meaningful way. And I know it's a challenge, absolutely, to find individual ways to connect with 500 plus kids on a school campus, but I hope that I can bring that energy and expertise to supporting students, teachers, and families with helping students find their way to connect with the school community and take ownership of their learning and make it a meaningful experience. And same with parents as well. It's really important to me that parents feel engaged and connected to their school community. I believe that all parents care about their kids and most importantly want to be involved in their child's education in any way possible. And so something that's really passionate to me is to support families with finding access points in ways that they can engage with their child's learning in a meaningful way, and just know that no matter what way they're able to contribute, it is meaningful and valued, and their contribution to the larger school community is going to be important, not only for their child, but for the school at large. And really looking forward to just bringing this energy and passion that I have for inclusive education, for equity for all families to both school communities. So thank you again, and look forward to this next journey as an educational leader.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matsuoka, and welcome, Ms. Curry. Thank you so much. Are you?
Yes, so that concludes the upfront report, and then we'll hear the longer COVID-19 report at the end.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thanks to our three, not so all new, but welcome to the employees. It's wonderful. It's great to have you join us this way. And we can't wait to actually be in person with you all. Welcome. Okay, then with that, I'm going to move to board comments or correspondence. Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge our new members to the district community and just personally say welcome, because I think it's amazing that they're willing to step forward in this time of uncertainty, but they're willing to move in and really take on this great opportunity. And I just want to welcome James Koenig and Denise Granger and Ariel Curry. And I was just really impressed with what they had to share and what their future is going to be with us. And I'm excited to have them along. So thank you.
Excellent. Any other comments or correspondence? Ms. Ford.
Oh, thank you so much. I wanted to report that we had a Zoom meeting of the Executive Committee of the Santa Barbara School Boards Association. And I thought it was really helpful, so it might be helpful to cabinet members, to the public, and of course to my colleagues on the board to hear the way that Susan Salcido, our county superintendent, described what has to happen in order for schools to reopen, the conditions that have to be in place. And I think it just only brought up to all of us board members just how difficult our next part of this journey is going to be. One, she said, you have to have expectations and possible new funding for distance learning, including professional development for our teachers. Two, she said there have to be agreements made with all of our employee unions for conditions and changes in the work world. Three, she said there has to be some flexibility allowed with instructional minutes and attendance keeping, which we have seen. And four, possibly the most difficult one is managing the expectations of students and parents if we do open up the schools, because it won't look at all like it did before. So it was very helpful for us to have this meeting. I also just wanted to mention that despite the terribly disastrous effects of this pandemic on so many across our country, I'm just so proud and grateful for what our whole community has done, and in particular our school district has done to flatten the curve and work so hard to address the intellectual, the social, emotional, and physical needs of our students, always keeping the students at the forefront of our thinking and as our true why. And I wanted to give props especially to Ms. Barnwell for creating the newsletter that she has, which has been so helpful to all of us in reinforcing optimism, resilience, and hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. That was wonderful. Any other comments or correspondence from the board? Okay, seeing none, we will move to public comment. And that I will rely on Mr. Trujillo to help us, to guide us through this process.
Good evening, board members and President Capps. We have no public comment on this item. Our public comment is not till E3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood your note. I thought we had some now.
Yeah, it's item E1 and E3.
Okay, maybe I'm going to do a little agenda management, because we have later on in the agenda, we have an update on our superintendent search, and we have our consultant Ben Johnson waiting. And last time that he appeared and participated in our meeting, it was about 10:45 p.m. So I'm going to move to our consent agenda first in order to give him a little heads up. But Mr. Trujillo, if you could let him know that he can come after that, that would be a great way to get to him first. And I also thought the members of the public who might not want to stay till the end of this meeting might want to hear the latest and greatest on our superintendent search.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we will move to the consent agenda. Item D, 1 through 11. Are there any items that any members of the board want to pull for discussion? I believe that items 4 and 5 on the personnel were ones that we wanted to at least give the board an opportunity to see, because they're two positions related to the executive office of the superintendent. So I'll be pulling those. And Mr. Matsuoka, if you could just speak to both of them briefly to explain to the board and also to the public what the significance of the new job descriptions are there.
So, board, do you want to, you want me to comment about 4 and 5 first, and then we'll vote on the whole consent agenda?
That sounds great.
Okay. So these two positions are the two admin assistants that support my work as superintendent. Ms. Trujillo is the item number 5, executive assistant to the superintendent. And that job description had maybe one line of change. It was just to codify that her position is responsible for the development of the board agenda and everything related to board meetings. And the board has experienced her support now for probably all the time that Ms. Ford and Ms. Munoz have been on the board, and for the other 3 for really almost 4 years. So there's just that one line change that explicitly states she builds the board agenda. My reason for that is I think of it like it's a teaching plan. So the development of the agenda plays out every Tuesday night at school board meetings. And I think it's really helpful for the person who organizes all that to be physically present at the meeting, to experience it, watch what flows, just, little glitches to clean up. And it also aligns with the minute taking. So everything now is aligned under one person. The other job description is it's probably a shift of about, I would say 40% of the content of that job. It is a new title, Digital Communication Specialist. Our other colleague in the office is Carol Tate, who the board also knows really well. What we have recognized is needed is more support around communications broadly, more support explicitly for Cammie Barnwell, our PIO. She does so much. She's like our writer, our editor, our storyteller. And board, I know that, Ms. Ford, you acknowledge her work. She is exemplary. She's a journalist and she's a storyteller. But there's some support that she could use. And we also need some help with our website. And so I would say about 60% of the job is things that Ms. Tate already does, but we really want to shift some of that position's time and energy towards communication. There are some things that we'll need her to learn, and she's already expressed to me that she looks forward to, learning new software platforms and digital tools. The title was chosen very carefully, because if you put administrative assistant and we had all these communication skills embedded, an applicant might not see it. But this is very clear that this position is aligned towards digital communications. So that's the background on these two job descriptions. More of a change with number 4, very minor change with number 5.
Excellent. Thanks for explaining. Any other consent agenda items that the board would like to have discussion or ask a question about? Okay, seeing none, then I need a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Oh,
I saw Ms. Ford first, but I heard somebody else. Okay, Ms. Sims-Moten made the motion and a second by Ms. Ford. How about that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, Mr. Hio, do we know if Ben is ready for the item to give the update on the superintendent search?
I'm verifying. 1 second.
Okay, thank you. I will speak just briefly as he's getting on. A communication went out just to last week, actually, about the fact that we're well on track to make our goal of appointing a new superintendent by May 30th. We are spending the entire this weekend all together on Zoom, interviewing some finalists, or sort of semi-finalists, but we've had a great pool. Even despite all the limitations of this pandemic, we had a really healthy, dynamic pool of candidates, and now we're moving forward thanks to all of the extra work that this is required by the board to do, and thanks to the good work of our consultants. So I see that Ben Johnson has now joined us, and I turn it over to him to give this latest update for the board and for the members of the community.
Hello, can you hear me and see me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great, but you cannot see me, huh? Well,
No.
you don't need to see me, I guess. So thank you, everybody. I would just echo President Capps' comments about the actual quality of candidates and the number of candidates that we've identified. It's exceptional. And so, but you also had really great feedback from your stakeholder groups. We identified actually 12 stakeholder groups during our process. We received direct input through our, from 120 people. That's just direct contact, not including the online information we had. So when you look at an overall summary of kind of what people said about the first category, what's great about the community, common themes were philanthropic, variety of cultural events, including the arts, museums, and festivals, and live music. There's a high connectivity with the community. Of course, people talked about the weather and the climate, but really engaging in outdoor activities, and a very vocal and very involved community. And then there was also comments about the high level of diversity in a positive way. And of course, universities and community colleges are positive partners for the community as well. The big things that came out, and it was presented in a variety of different ways, was what's great about the district, the academies, exceptional teachers, involved parents, and partnerships with nonprofits and foundations. And then the next area we focused on is really what should the candidate know before they come, and what kind of candidate do you want? And the things that were talked about relative to what the candidate should know is there's a disparity between the haves and have-nots, so there really isn't a middle ground. There's a larger socioeconomic difference between people that do have things and people that do not have things in the community. The high cost of living and some difficulty for parents and employees to live within the district. That a significant amount of work has been done relative to equity and inclusion, and that includes multiculturalism and ethnic studies, and new superintendents should continue that vision. So for that to be ranked third as far as what's been done in this district, I think that's a big wow for what the board and your current leadership has done in the district, to really kind of bring that to the forefront, and a positive thing that's seen throughout the community. There was some comments about needing to improve transparency and communication. The next point is rather interesting. There's this unrealistic expectation from some groups within the community that really want the district to provide a private school expectation with public school budget. So the district's being asked to do a lot, and the fact that the community across all economic groups felt that as well, and that was one of your top things. So it does bring to the forefront that the district can't do everything, and there are some people that the expectations that districts should be doing everything is unrealistic. There's some trust issues within the community that was not really vetted out any further, so we'd have to dig further when we have you do any kind of strategic planning about what that means. and there was issues relative to access to some academies, to affordability, where some people can afford the academies and some people cannot. And not uncommon when you think about schools now, but there's a feeling that the academies appear to be segregated. And sometimes there's even a school within a school where some people feel left out because of this feeling of segregation. There's definite comments relative to the board and superintendent to develop a more cohesive governance team. And then the last common area was special ed needs to be evaluated, and there's some issues relative to how people are classified and identified relative to special ed. The next area is what characteristics or traits are wanted from the next superintendent or the next leader. They want someone that's visionary, that's visible and approachable, that has strong political savvy, active community listener and communicator, someone has the ability to build trust, collaborator, innovator. The actual term leader of leaders was actually used several times, but the theme was definitely one of the top things: fiscally knowledgeable and culturally proficient. And that's the summary. Are there any questions?
No, thank you. I think you gave us, thank you, a bit of that high level summary right after you had done those stakeholders. So it's good to hear, to be reminded of what the community input and how important that is, and how that's informing too as we go forward in these final stages. Any questions on the board?
Yeah, so the things that came out from the online survey just really kind of mirrored what we had already talked about post the in-person sessions. There really wasn't a significant difference. Is there anything else from the board?
Ms. Ford?
Yeah. Sorry.
Caps, I wonder if it would be okay to ask Mr. Johnson if he would outline what is happening in the next few days so that the community has an idea about the process.
Sure.
Good discussion. Yep.
So we are interviewing candidates in how many days?
2 days.
I'm sorry?
For 2 days on Saturday, Sunday. Yep.
We're interviewing this weekend. The finalists, we have 3 candidates on Saturday and 2 candidates on Sunday, if memory serves me correctly. And as mentioned, there were probably 5 other candidates we had a real strong list of candidates for people wanting to come to this district. And that does say a lot about what you're already doing, because no matter how great the location is, exceptional candidates don't want to go to a place where they're concerned about good governance and about leadership and about their long-term career. So it does say a lot that you have really just a good pool of candidates that will take over the good work that's already been done by your current superintendent.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments from the board? I just want to take the opportunity to thank the many members of the public, some of whom might be participating in this meeting, who did fill out those surveys and were part of the stakeholder meetings. It's been a wonderful process so far, and I hope will yield, I'm very optimistic will yield an excellent new superintendent to guide us forward into these uncertain times. So thank you, Mr. Johnson, for that update. And with that, we will move back to the agenda as it stands. Let me pull it up here. But thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. I'm glad it's not, 11:45 p.m. like we finished last time with you. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
And we will see you bright and early Saturday morning.
See you Saturday morning. Thank you.
Great.
Everybody.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We're going to move now to item E, which is the action agenda. And that's E1, the approval of resolution 2019-20-25, recognizing May 5th through May 9th as Teacher Appreciation Week. I believe we do have a speaker. Am I correct, Mr. Hio, that we have a public speaker on this?
Yes, you're correct. We have Ms. Karen McBride. Karen, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, well, you have 3 minutes and I will let you know when you have 30 seconds.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Good evening, President Capps and members of the board. You know me, and I should let you know that when I speak to you as president of the Santa Barbara Teachers Association, I'm speaking on behalf of over 730 certificated professionals. And first of all, I really sincerely mean it when I say thank you for the resolution you're about to adopt in recognition of our educators, who really deserve our respect and appreciation now more than ever. But as you're about to adopt this resolution honoring our teachers for their valuable service and their vital role, I would like you to consider the oft-used adage that actions speak louder than words. And I want to emphasize the importance of the collective expertise of this group of people and the value of their words and actions. On April 23rd, multiple educators represented hundreds of colleagues of theirs when they asked this board to approve a grading policy of credit, no credit for the fourth quarter of the school year. It was a request to do something to help address the great inequities among the students that have been highlighted by COVID-19. And I've now heard from many of the SBTA members about their extreme disappointment in the decision made by the board in rejecting the input of these professionals and rejecting the recommendation of the grading policy committee of 26 people who worked for weeks to arrive at the recommendation of credit, no credit. That committee reached out to site leadership teams that are made up of leading educators throughout the district. And within SBTA, we even conducted our own survey, which showed that most respondents wanted the credit, no credit option. And our voice was represented in that committee decision. Yet this board bent to the recommendation of a handful of folks, or at least that was the perception. I'll give you that. People who are versed in educational access, but they're not frontline educators. You didn't listen to the stories of students who couldn't Zoom in for themselves because of extenuating circumstances, and you didn't seem to listen to the stories that were brought to you by teachers who see and hear from their students or don't hear from them, depending upon, again, their access and home circumstances. And few people besides educators are seeing dozens of kids a day, assessing their needs, allaying their fears, watching and listening with their hearts in Zoom session after Zoom session, and being not only educators, but motivators. And as we negotiate beyond the emergency phase of COVID-19 to open the next school year in some manner, I want to remind you all that the recommendations that come from our certificated members who are trained to differentiate for a continuum of learning styles and needs, but are always striving within those continuums to provide equitable experiences and outcomes. And as we recommend plans for fair and safe working and learning conditions for our students and colleagues in this extraordinary circumstance that's still before us, we want you to show us with your actions and not these words tonight that you respect of our professional expertise by heeding our recommendations. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Right.
Okay.
President Capps, that concludes public comment on this item.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think this is Dr. Becchio.
Thank you, and good evening, board members. I bring this before you tonight as a way to recognize all of our certificated educators. This isn't just teachers, but we have a variety of different certificated support staff. And the week in the week in May, which was just last week, that we recognize and appreciate those formally. You know, I don't want to be lost on this resolution, the fact that we really have an obligation to show appreciation throughout the year, but it is important to put forward a formal public recognition of our certificated teaching staff. And so that's what this is tonight, and particularly right now when our staff is dealing with their family circumstances, all in the same space that they're dealing with their professional obligations. And so I think tonight's an extra special night to recognize them, and I put this before you for that, and I know you will support it. I also wanted to say that I did speak with our CSEA president, Paul Rooney, today, and we will be getting from them a resolution that we'll bring before you on the next board meeting. So we will, their appreciation week is the 17th. I believe it starts the 17th. So I wanted to mention that as well, that you will see that come before you. at our next meeting. So with that, I'd like to leave you with the resolution and consider it for action.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vecchio. Any questions or comments from members of the board? I'm sure there will be. Ms. Sims-Moton.
I thank you, President Capps. I just want, a few words we need to say in terms, at least from coming from me, is to simply say thank you. And I know that's certainly not enough, but it really just accentuates what the depth of these teachers go through and what they're doing. And they are extraordinary teachers already. And it's good to have extraordinary teachers and other class of certificated workers in these extraordinary times. And so that's why we're able to go forth and still, support our students in a way that, as best we can, and support them and inspire them through this, because we already have extraordinary teachers. And to add extraordinary under that, I just wanted to share my appreciation for thank you, and knowing that that's not enough. But I think in terms of that, it's simple and true to the fact that you do a lot of work all the time, and it doesn't just stop when you leave this classroom at 3. So I appreciate you.
Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Reed.
Yeah, just to dovetail Ms. Sims-Moton and say ditto to that. And also, like what Dr. Vecchio mentioned, that today is an important day to bring this forward, this resolution, for a week of appreciation. But what we really need to do is an ongoing appreciation, and maybe ways for families to think about how we can support our teachers and what they're doing, and to acknowledge them. I know I have student teachers that are trying to continue relationships with their students, and it's hard when they were in person. They could just sort of stop by and just pop their head in and say, oh, hello, and have that sort of way to communicate in a normal environment. And now in this environment, it's a lot more difficult. But she was talking about creative ways for her to acknowledge her students, and for parents to acknowledge the teachers and the work that they're doing. So I'm hoping that can happen, that this appreciation can be certainly a resolution for a week, but that we really need to acknowledge them, and maybe a little special ways that we can in a virtual way. So being creative and stepping out of the box to figure out what that might be. But I appreciate all that you're doing, and all of the hard work you're doing, and are so thankful that you are part of our group and our team.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. I just wanted to add my thanks, and I had the pleasure of participating in a teacher parade for Roosevelt Elementary. Some of you might have seen it on the cover of the news press, but it was just the most poignant. I think there were so many tears because the teachers conducted a parade, and all of us were all throughout sort of the area of Roosevelt. And it was the first time, I know we've been seeing each other all on Zoom, but to see each other in cars and waving at the Rose Garden was just quite emotional, and just signified how poignant this time is really right now. And I think if there were ever a time when all across the world people are acknowledging the tough jobs of teachers, it's right now, as parents are trying to do their best and make life work, and realizing just how incredibly hard it is. So I weigh in as well at this really important time in the work of what our teachers are doing for our kids every day. Ms. Ford.
I can only just underscore that aside from the fact that teaching is the absolute best job in the world, the people who go into teaching are also the absolute best people. And I have so many friends who are teachers in Santa Barbara that are working extremely hard now to provide distance learning. They're frustrated with the inability to connect personally with each of their students. They are naturally fearful of what the future will hold. And I just want to reiterate not only our admiration and gratitude for them, but also just our recognition of the courage and the time, the work, and the resilience that is going into their lives right now.
Okay, well, with that, I need a motion to pass this resolution. Ms. Munoz.
Hi, actually, I wanted to comment regarding the teachers. If that's
Please,
okay.
I figured, go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to recognize, the support and guidance that the teachers give our students. They've been mentors to our students. They've supported them with, mental health. Their dedication throughout the years. I mean, so many of our teachers in Santa Barbara School District have taught generation after generation, where they know a family, second, third generations in, and the flexibility that we get from them, is that, now this program's going to happen. And of course, with COVID, having them be flexible in a short amount of time and reach out to the students personally, one-on-one, dropping off laptop, iPads to the home, making sure that all of their students are there and know that they have their support. So just want to, applaud them for years and their years of service, and appreciate them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. With that, I will move to accept this resolution in support of teachers across the district. I need a second.
Second.
Dr. Reed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dr. Becchio. Thank you to Ms. McBride for speaking. And to all our teachers. So item E2, which is the approval of the tentative agreement between Santa Barbara Unified School District and the California School Employees Association. Dr. Becchio.
Unmute. This item comes to you as a result of our negotiations with CSEA over the last couple months. And you will notice that the attached document deals with Article 9, which is just the wages. It demonstrates the 2% that was agreed to in terms of a salary increase. And I put this before you tonight for your review and approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? I don't believe we have it. Okay, I need a motion, please. Ms. Ford.
So move.
Ms. Munoz with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now we are moving on to the last item in our action agenda, which is item 3. It's Mr. Matsuoka. It's the approval of food service recommendations. I believe we do have 3 speakers to this item. So Mr. Hia.
Yes, good evening again, President Capps. We have 2 speakers on this item. First, we have Mr. Ken Rivas. Mr. Rivas, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes and I will give you a 30-second warning. You may start.
Okay, I don't have a lot to say, being that I have sent a correspondence to all the board members. And first of all, I want to say good evening to all of you. So I'll make this short. What I like to say is I really like to see the school board allow the new director to improve the operations and put in place some cost-saving measures. I've had a chance to meet with him. He seems to be a great person. I have some confidence that he is going to, be a great attribute to the food service department. But let's see him get to work and do some of these things. And I think that he can come up with a lot of cost savings measures that won't necessarily have to come to layoffs. And so, again, as you know, I'm opposed to laying off the number of employees that is recommended. I think that if he needs assistance, I think that you might find it necessary for him to have someone to assist him in his work. So I think that 6 is excessive. I think that we have to give it a chance, have to give him a chance to see how he progresses and gets things done. But with the help of maybe a manager, I don't have any qualms about that, but I think 6 is really excessive. But certainly maybe he can use an assistant, a manager, to as he goes through this. I also want to make a point that looking at the numbers of employees, I know there's been a lot of emphasis on numbers of employees, but I noticed that back when the recommendations were being brought forth, there was 136 employees in the kitchen service department, but now we're down to 123, and I can see that decrease just as a matter of when we come around this time of school year, some people don't return, and others resign. Some may retire, but I can see that those numbers falling down lower to 123 without the layoff. So, and again, it bothers me that it seems like
30 seconds.
The number of employees is the whole reason why we're at where we are, and that's not, you know, that's not it. There's a lot of things that came into play, and it wasn't based just on the number of staff. Anyhow, that's my input, and I hope you consider what I've addressed in the letter to you. And thank you for your time this evening and giving me some time on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Rivas. Next, we have Mr. Paul Rooney.
Good evening. I'm Paul Rooney, president of Chapter 37, and which represents classified employees of the Santa Barbara School District. Thank you for the chance to address an important issue. As you might be aware, I'm not a frequent speaker here, so I want to thank you for your continued support for our school district employees and students. Tonight, you're tasked with a decision to pass a resolution to lay off members of an elite group of employees that not only give their devotion to serving our children the food they need to sustain their health and to grow into young adults, but the same truly essential workers that have put themselves in harm's way during the most challenging period of the world has had to deal with it, always putting the children first. Certainly, the perspective of our administration is putting students and community as a priority to serve. But are food service essential workers not part of that community? Now, having been marginalized and taken for granted over the years, what do we say to them? See you later? Fend for yourself? After all, the hesitant decision-making of the administration to take action years ago to avert tonight's potential action when was the ball dropped, or who dropped the ball? Based on the lack of action, we see who continues to receive the reward of this action and who is the first to suffer from that inaction. It is classified employees who need their job to take care of their family like everyone else, wondering if they still have a job next year. Our classified leadership has always taken a collaborative relationship with the administration. What has happened? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
President
you.
Capps, that concludes. Hello?
Yes. Thank you to our speakers. Mr. Matsuoka.
Okay, I will now share my screen. All right, is slide deck's showing? Can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for responses. So we, as your staff, heard a list of requests about further information, clarification. And so what this report is to respond to the request from April 28th. And we will walk you through the slide deck, which is also supported by the accompanying narrative. The board asked for an overview of the organizational structure, and so we'll see that in a diagram in a few minutes. The board asked for what policy conversations have we been involved in across the district, board and staff. Board asked for an explanation of all the other options that we considered before recommending layoffs. And then the board asked for a description of the actual layoff process. So the proposed organizational structure is right now we have one manager supervising 123 staff, which we went through it last time. I'll just remind the board that is not a appropriate or healthy supervision ratio. Not to mention that these sites are scattered across 12 different physical locations. So the idea of one person supervising that many people across our geographical span is too much. We are proposing a structure eventually, and let me emphasize eventually, of 6 food service managers to supervise an eventual workforce of around 94 staff when the entire reorganization is completed. I apologize to the board about not getting the job description for the food service manager in time for the agenda. We did send it out this afternoon, and it's not on the agenda for your review and approval, but since it's part of the whole package, we'd be glad to respond to questions about the job description. So here's an organizational chart of what we are proposing. Right now, the diagram would show one food service director directly supervising 123 individuals. We've set this diagram up around physical locations. And so we have 12 production kitchens. Mostly in our district, we do have the one satellite location all the way up in Santa Maria. So the layer that we are proposing is a food service management layer. That's the kind of the yellow, pretty yellowish layer, where these will be management positions that can supervise and evaluate, train, and support these 12 kitchens. The layer there, you see it sort of a salmon colored. So that's called a kitchen lead. That is a classified position. Just like on our groundskeeping custodial teams, we have a lead. They can't evaluate, but they do organize the work of a team. So there will be a kitchen lead inside of every kitchen. I'm pretty sure, and Meg can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that we have that structure in place now, but it needs to be strengthened later. Policy conversations, the list in the narrative is longer than the one I've shown. Ms. Jate has been the point person on a lot of those conversations, many up with CDE. Ms. Capps and I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Congressman Salud Carbajal. It was last week on Monday. It was really great that he reached out to us and asked how can he help. We talked about the deficits that we're all facing with food service. He promised to take that back to Washington, but will that happen? We will see. For the last couple weeks, I've joined the Thursday County, what's called Food Task Force meetings. It's chaired by the Food Bank Chief Operations Officer, Paul. And it's been really helpful for me just to get a sense of what's going on at the county level. So we identified 7 prior steps, well, 6, and then the labor costs. I'll just comment about a few of them that I think would be worth drawing attention to. Menu and labor or recipe design, we could save a lot of money if we went to prepackaged meals. But we know the quality of our food, the reputation of our kitchens. We do scratch cooking, and it's worth it, but it is labor intensive. We could reduce a lot of costs. Of course, that would be mostly labor, but we knew that that would not be a solution, so we did not consider that. The other one that I'll comment briefly, logistics. Could we consolidate kitchens to be more efficient? You know, these 12 locations have been around for decades, and I think it's to spread the workload out across the geography. We have eliminated mobile cafes. The savings is in the narrative. I believe it was 135,000, something like that, in the 100 to 200K range. We are recommending the elimination of the free provision 2 breakfast at selected schools. We brought that up to the board I believe it was December and February. At the time, we projected that that would save us about $100,000 a month. When you project that over the actual school year, the savings will be between $800,000 and $900,000. So that will help significantly. But the area where we are over budgeted, overstaffed is our labor costs. And board, we have analyzed this over and over with you. We are simply overstaffed. And so we are left to bring you the recommendation to begin a restructuring that reduces the staffing of our food service program. I will remind our listeners and our classified union, this is staffing so that we can still provide 100% of the food service support when our schools are in full operation. So I've said that every time we've delivered this report, and I'm going to repeat it every time. This restructuring still leaves us with a department that can fully operate and deliver all the meals that we need to. I drew a simple diagram, the relationship of the general fund to Fund 13. By the way, that arrow only goes one way. We never draw from food service to support the district's general fund. We've always kept that separate. Right now, we are transferring over this year. I think the total is going to be $1.9 million. That's our estimate. We are asking the board to take action so that we do not deplete the funds in our general fund, which are going to be so important to watch over, to protect as we head into the recession and an unknown future. So the layoff process is described in the document. I did send out a few more notes this afternoon, request to the board. We did want to clarify that the 60-day is a statutory minimum, but as we work this through with employees and then the first wave, then we have, bumping scenarios. More likely it could take 90 days to work it all the way through. Want to clarify that the majority of our food service employees are 9 months. And so their first workday would begin on August 19th. That's the first day of instruction. I actually think it's August 18th. And so we are now inside of a 90-day window to the reopening of school. And we really are asking the board to take action. I'll remind the board and the community, if we are under a school closure like we are today, our daily financial loss will resemble what we are experiencing right now, which is as high as $25,000 a day. So the recommendation that we bring to you tonight is that the board approve this restructuring plan to create, let me modify this, food service managers. All right, we are open to starting with a number of managers to get started. 2 would help. That still leaves 3 people supervising 12 kitchens scattered all over Santa Barbara up to Santa Maria. We did not properly communicate that rollout of food service managers was going to be over time, just as we're asking for a phased approach to the layoffs. So I'd be glad to modify that slide in your conversations and debates. If we created 2 food service managers, that will help us get started on the beginnings of a management structure. And that the board approved the reduction of 16% of our food service workforce. That would lead to the actual resolution brought forward at the next meeting. So those conclude my comments. Be glad to address any questions from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Matsuoka. I just wanted to clarify, since the meeting was referenced in your report about the meeting with Salud Carbajal. It was discussed that it was a general meeting, but we did, of course, raise the challenges with food service. And it was discussed that in the federal legislation that was passed, the CARES Act, $9 billion will be coming specifically for food service. We don't yet know what that means for our district, but we should have an idea of that as soon as this end of this week. from the governor when he puts out his revised budget. So we did actually talk about relief that will be coming from the federal government as well as potentially from the state. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that. One thing I did have to, I wanted to, before I turn it over to colleagues, because I wanted to give you all an opportunity. From our last conversation, an item is missing from this report. We wanted to know as well the steps that were being taken to increase participation in food service right now during this challenging time. And so if perhaps the team or you, Mr. Matsuoka, can speak to those efforts to increase our numbers. I know we're serving about 30,000 meals a week, but obviously that's just a fraction of what we do when school is physically in session. So if you could speak to, since we last met and it was the desire of the board to see how we could increase participation, those extra efforts that have taken place since we last met.
Yeah, I'll invite comments from Ms. Jate and Mr. Dittman, but before I turn it over to them, in my COVID report, the superintendent report, every time I do this report, I'm going to track the food service numbers. And yes, we are up to 31,000 meals a week. That's 6,265 a day. The increases were rapid and they are starting to slow down because, you know, we might be reaching the edges of what we can promote, encourage. It is increasing slowly. To balance out the budget deficit, we'd have to get to our normal meal delivery, which Ms. Jate, I think you've said is how many per week or per month?
I believe it's up over 100,000 or 200,000 a month that we have to get to. That's what our usual meals are. We usually feed over 9,000 lunches, and I don't remember breakfasts, but yeah, if I remember right, it's about 150, 200,000 meals a month.
Okay. So, Mr. Dittman, why don't you comment about what we've been doing to promote meal distribution and probably contributions to this as well?
Yes, we have been trying to pursue different avenues, not the least of which in promotion. We have reached out to various radio stations to try and promote more in line with that. We are also trying to explore other avenues of distribution. We've recently just heard from the CDA as of yesterday that we can have other groups, as long as they provide us parental permission through a form, to pick up for larger groups in satellite positions. This is something that we weren't aware of before, and something that they've just kind of now made us aware of. We think that that could help us. I was talking with a representative from People's Self-Help Housing, and they have about 150 students that we could possibly serve to in addition. And then, in regards to President Capps' request that we look into a later 5 o'clock service, I have been in contact with the CDE as well about that and trying to figure out the kind of ability that we have to do that.
Okay, so some things are kind of pending, I guess it sounds like. Thank you. I'll turn it over. Those are I wanted to ask those questions about the presentation, but now I'll give my colleagues a chance to ask and make comments. Ms. Ford.
Thank you. First of all, it may not sound like when I make some of my comments like I appreciate this group and the work that's been done, but I do. I, in particular, know how hard it is to cut budgets and especially when it comes down to people. I also want to say that I enjoyed a Zoom meeting last week with Mr. Dittman, and I'm very excited to have him at the helm of food services. And I don't mean to make a lot of conditions that sound like I want to hold this hostage, but I do have some expectations going forward. And Mr. Matsuoka, Ms. Jete, and Mr. Dittman know what they are, but I'll state them for my colleagues since we haven't violated Brown Act by sharing any information. First of all, I don't think that the plan should include any more than 2 managers. I also want to make sure that the job description does not require a bachelor's degree. And then I had some expectations about the plan that I was disappointed about, and I really want the plan to be revised from what was presented to us on 4/28, with all the new information that was given to us and the new data included in it, and also the subjective statements that are in that plan removed. They're still there, and I think that this plan deserves to be more formal, more objective. I also want 2 things included in order for me to vote for this in this plan. One would be a specific reference to immediately create more creative ways, have it in the plan to increase revenue and distribute more meals. And also, based on the feedback that we've gotten in the last few days, that this restructuring plan has to include some statements about a plan to improve communication with and to increase the input of CSEA. So those are 5 points that are important to me in order to approve this going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Munoz.
Sorry, before I comment, I wanted to ask if Kate could say again the last part, like the last part of what you're asking about before it, or I was trying to catch it. Sorry.
Just my last point that the plan, I want the plan to include all the information that came to us a little bit in dribs and drabs over the last few days, and to be revised with all the objective information and data included and the subjective statements out, and then also specific references to ways to increase and creative ways to increase revenue and distribution of meals now, because this will probably go on, and also a plan to improve communication with and to receive the input of CSEA.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we could note that we've gotten a petition from CSEA of how many? 1,200 employees who are opposed to this plan. Other questions or comments? Yeah, Ms. Munoz.
Okay, I'm going to read this because, as you know, I'm trying to be clear and such. I personally am increasingly uncomfortable with this approach, the approach that's being proposed. Can you hear me okay? Okay. To approve cutbacks without looking at the whole picture. And I, agree with what Kate is saying in terms of what's being presented and how I think we need more clarity. I personally would like to have a fresh look taken at food service for the coming year, 2021. I think that, as we've mentioned in the previous board meeting and this board meeting, is that we don't know what school is going to look like in terms of the staggered schedules, and there's much uncertainty in terms of what our students' nutritional needs are going to be, and in terms of being able to pick up meals for the children in our school district. We were provided a job description, as Mr. Matsuoka said, a few hours ago. I have not honestly had a chance to thoroughly review it. And I think some of my colleagues may echo this. And I think that it should be considered both the restructuring, what to do with food services, and the job description all together, not have it in parts, in different parts. In speaking with our food service employees, they have provided much insight to me, and I've talked to several about their experience in food services, what they would like to see and what their vision is, and I'd like to see that included. I did visit last week. I visited the San Marcos High School site with food distribution, and was very, very much appreciated and honored to speak to our food service employees. And I also met several of the parents who went to pick up meals for their children. The last meeting, as was referred to earlier, I'm also concerned about parents that work from, 8 to 6 during the day, and about when they're able to get over there to pick up meals for the students. And I am part of in my community activism, I am part of, supporting the youth responders. And we have actually approached Mr. Dittman in terms of being able to pick up meals we have about 20 to 26 students daily that we're working with that are at risk, and they're giving back to the community, and we're concerned, and would like to be considered for picking up those lunches for those students. I am also concerned about the employees that would be laid off. How many of them are also parents to our school district students? From what I get, I think it's about approximately 20 employees that are parents of our students. And I'm concerned about that. We have received a letter from one of the students themselves who's stressed out about this, and that's only one of the students in our district. The impact is, someone who's also, I'm going to be 61 this year, and I did talk to several employees that are, in their late 50s, 60s, and such, and I'm concerned about how many of them are single parents, how many are women over 50 years old, and what the impact would be of layoff, and then also if they went from a 12-month employee, to a 9-month employee, that would take longer to accrue retirement benefits, and their retirement would be calculated by their salary. I think it's from the last 2-year period of employment. But I think that, as I'm looking at this, so we've spent, many hours trying to look at this. We know that there is an issue. There's possibly also costs that are related to the products that are used, and such. And for me, I think I know that I'm not ready to vote, and I would really like to have this considered, to have a look with fresh eyes at this, and also consider the union employees.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. Dr. Reed or Ms. Sims-Moton, if you have any questions. Dr. Reed.
Thank you. And thank you to my fellow board members. I did want to speak that I want to acknowledge and appreciate the work that is done to uncover this this challenging situation that we found ourselves in and learned about 5 months ago to where we are now. And I appreciate the process of uncovering and revealing the information. I guess what I don't appreciate is that the response of how to deal with the situation wasn't in a comprehensive manner, that it has come to us in sort of actually push from the board asking questions to have more information about how this process was going to unfold. I understand that we are in a difficult situation, that our losses are at $25,000 a day, that we, and I also appreciate the work that's gone to really look at what the department was doing. And to me, it clearly was a management issue. There was systems that were not in place. There was structures that were not in place. The fact that we had a director that couldn't evaluate staff because they didn't have the ability to in that management position didn't make sense to me. And I guess I also question, we hired Mr. Dittman, and I think you're amazing, Mr. Dittman, but in your short time here, but why are we now talking about hiring 6 managers? Why not at the time of hiring the director? did we not have an idea that perhaps in hiring the director, we also know we need to hire 6 managers or this, like, why wasn't there a plan in place? Why did we have to sort of dig to find out more information? I also am curious that that you brought up, Ms. Capps, was the CARES Act, which brings forward $9 billion from the federal government for food services. And so that message is supposed to be revealed sometime this week, and I'd be really interested to know, what does that mean for our district and how can that be utilized, and what creative ways might we utilize that money that would afford us not having to lay off so many people. I also appreciate the idea of thinking of new and creative ways to deal with this, that management. I appreciate the fact that it can be a process of layoffs, but just the whole idea of layoffs, I'm sorry, I struggle with that at this point in time. And trying to figure out how we can make it work for the time being. I want to see what the funding is with this new CARES Act. And I feel like I want it to be a comprehensive package, much like what Ms. Munoz said and Ms. Ford. And this is everything. This is everything. We've looked at everything. This is the package. This is what we're doing. This is our plan. I would have appreciated that as opposed to this sort of choppy process.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Ms. Sims-Moton. Yeah, you're muted.
Maybe I didn't want you to hear that first part. No, I just want to appreciate all the comments and to thoughtfully and carefully say what I'm saying. All of which we're talking about, we're in a quagmire because we're in the situation of a pandemic and so much in terms of human, loss of life and then loss of jobs and just all of those things that are happening here, and trying to make this difficult decision in this time, right? It's a difficult decision no matter when we talk about it. If we go back to, so for me, it's about structure. And I think that's what I'm trying to hear and see from both Meg and Mr. Dittman and Mr. Matsuoka said. We got a structural problem here that seemingly at the way we are currently right now, it doesn't matter how much money we're putting at it, what we may bring in, it will still have a structural problem when those dollars go away if we don't have some more firm foundation as to what we're doing. So I can appreciate what my colleagues are saying with regards to bringing it together, in a more comprehensive together plan, but I don't think you really got all that. You were hearing stuff and giving us stuff and we were giving feedback. I could certainly see the choppiness with regards to that, but we have a structural problem that creates a deficit that will continue on. We've got to address that structural problem in order to be more firm on where we're trying to go, because it feels like if we're saying, let's not lay off, and that sentiment certainly is not lost on me at all. Haven't been person had, on the end of a layoff, but it feels like cracked ice. We're just putting rice, and where you're putting your footing is just carefully going. And at some point it's going to drop. The ice is just going to give way. And I think that's the more we delay the structural decisions that we have to make and to firm up this department, right? And so I just want to make sure that we're looking at that so we can be creative to change things. But if we don't change the structure and how we're going to run this department, it's just kicking it down the road. It really is. And it's a difficult decision, and that's not lost on me. And I say that from a very heartfelt place with regards to that. So a couple of things is that I agreed. I don't know that we necessarily need 6 managers. I don't know that. And I know you said that we're ramping up to that, but maybe you're starting out with a few to then again, assessing it along the way. Do we need to add, up to the 6 or not? So as we're phasing this process in, are we assessing it along the way, right? Firming it up as we go with regards to that. And so that's a huge concern for me. The other piece is that of the 123 employees are, and I don't know if this is clear, and if you've said it, I missed it, but in terms of the current employees that we have, how do we know where they're going to turn in the bumping process? So really, will we really have 16% after we go through the bumping process, or will it be less because some people were able to take up the new positions that you are offering? So just a little bit more clarity on that with regards to how many really is it going to physically be? I know we've got figures out there. I don't know if it's 21. I know somebody was saying 40, and I don't think it's that many, but just being a little bit clear on that. And I just really want to make sure if we don't do this now, how we do it. But if we don't do something now, we keep pushing it further down the road, and it's going to be harder to do. Because we're in this situation now that, but there will be other situations. And if we're not prepared to get us through those next challenging situations, we're going to be talking about this again in terms of that. And so the question becomes, if we're saying that, hey, we can't do this right now, it's hard and it's difficult, and all the comments that are being said, and we can't come to some conclusion with regards to how we can phase it in and lessen the hurt over time. But no, in the end, we've got to get to a number where it is manageable and where it is fiscally sound. Right now, we're very unstable with this. And if we keep going the way we're going, because it's hard to make a difficult decision, it's going to continue and grow and be more fiscally unstable, which then doesn't necessarily put us in a position to bring down funds. Because if anyone's going to give you funds, they want to make sure that you're able to handle those and what kind of plan you have overall in the long run to be able to do. So for me, I would like to see this plan. I would like to see us take some action on restructure, because we've got to start doing it. Whether it's phasing it in tonight on, hey, we don't want 6, we want 2, and the layoffs, and then really being clear what the layoffs do. We've got to move forward on that. In terms of that, if we're not willing to take some type of action to start to mitigate some of this deficit, then it just keeps growing. In terms of, then are we willing to live with the deficit that will keep growing? It's a question that we need to ask ourselves, because it's not just for this moment, in this very hurting and hard moment. It is for the future too, and being ready to be able to respond to things. I want to see us as a board take some action on trying to mitigate and strengthen up this food service division, because we are fiscally unstable right now. And so whatever, even if it's a small 2-3 steps, but do something, in terms of that. Just, there's been suggestions here from all of us, reducing number of managers. How do we do the layoffs? How do we do that? How do we do that? But we've got to do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moten, Sims Moten. I'd like to continue where you left off. Because it's really important I want to state for myself, we know that we're going to make some really tough choices. We're in a pandemic now, and there's going to be tough choices to be made that we've never even imagined. I mean, we've already taken steps here that we never planned for, closing schools, grading policy, et cetera. But this isn't about not wanting to do a hard thing. This is about wanting to do a smart thing. And let me give you some data. I've spent a lot of time on this. I'm passionate about feeding kids who need healthy, nutritious meals. It's a commitment I know everyone here shares. But when I looked at the numbers and I went back and reviewed all of the presentations, the one from February really stood out. We had a deficit at the time, this is pre-pandemic, of about $800 to $1 million back then. When you look at one of the suggestions put forward by Mr. Tay, by not feeding kids breakfast who don't qualify for free and reduced meals, we save $100,000 a month. Okay, simple math tells you that pretty much closes the deficit right there. And it seems like we're in agreement that that's a step that makes sense in taking. Even though breakfast is so important and so vital, I can definitely stand behind only making it free for the kids who qualify. I'm supportive of that step. So that's the first number, is that $800,000 to $1 million that will be saved by that step. The second is, we were told back in February, I believe, oh, we need to stop contracts with all of these different nonprofits. Well, it turns out the biggest one, as I dove into the numbers and met with them, was actually profitable for us. That's the Community Action Commission. Sure, I'm not opposed to restructuring things, and I know contracts are being worked on right now, but let's not, in the light of saving money, let's not just get rid of things that are actually working and actually saving us money. And then we come to, thanks Dr. Reed for bringing it back up, federal money is coming for it specifically. We're not alone in dealing with this challenge of, for us, it's $25,000 a day. This is what every school district is facing. And there are leaders in our state and elected and federal government that are setting aside funding for this exact purpose. So we're in a whole new reality now. And yet we're making this decision that it impacts the lowest paid workers. Yet we don't even know exactly what we're dealing with. So I do believe that we're out of step in terms of the process. The food truck, the mobile cafes, we're eliminating those. Okay, sure, I understand if we're not using them, we shouldn't be paying for them, but we're eliminating those at the time that we're struggling with how to deal with the fact that kids are at home and not in school. And districts, you read about it, they're actually using their bus routes to deliver food. We have to be creative. We have to be innovative. And I would rather us, rather than spending this time talking about our lowest paid workers, I believe in the district, eliminating 21 of those. How do we get more families to access these wonderful meals? I've been putting forward suggestions. Frankly, some of them are just ignored. And let's marshal our resources to figuring this out. I just want to end with the people that we're talking about. These aren't just our lower paid workers, but these are essential workers who've been going to work every day. Unlike me, they've actually been putting on a mask and risking their health to feed our kids. And yet we're kind of doing this out of step. I'm hearing the consensus from some of the board members that, you know, we don't really know if it's 2 or if it's 6 managers. We don't know how much money is coming from the federal government. We don't really have a comprehensive plan. We got a lot of things in bits and pieces. Well, we shouldn't lead with a tough decision that impacts the frontline workers who for the past several weeks have been actually feeding our families at the detriment of their own health. It doesn't sit well with me, and it's something I can't support, but it does not mean that I'm not eyes wide open that this job is going to mean a lot of tough decisions. For me, this is just not the place to start. And so I'm opposed to this recommendation.
Well, can I just kind of feedback that, because I don't want to be my comments to be mischaracterized as that I don't care about the very things that you just stated, because they really do. And I'm thinking beyond that piece, which is why I was saying in terms of what are the action we need to take in terms of phases, how do we need to do that? Doesn't necessarily mean that we take all of that, this recommendation, but I'm just saying we take action toward how do we get this place in a healthy place. And if such as you're suggesting, so like I said, if we're bringing in CARES money, we're bringing in all this money, and I think we've had opportunities in the past to kind of do that, but do we have the sound fiscal foundation that will carry us through when we're in times like this? So we're not back at this conversation about laying people off. Certainly, of course, people are at the very beginning, so I don't want those, you know, in response to your comments, and I appreciate every comment here. I'm just also giving that other side in the long term, and also hearing some of the fiscal inefficiencies that we have here that will continue to dog us along the way in terms of that. And so I'm also thinking, what do we do when we get out of here? And that's not to imply that we're not willing to make difficult decisions. I'm just saying that it is a very difficult decision in a very difficult time, but it doesn't mean that we can't keep our eye on the foundation, that because we go back to some of the things that when we found out in, you know, with the audit in terms of the structure, the management structure, the evaluation, things that need to happen to ensure that we're strong and ready to go forward. So that's where you hear me saying that, and that has nothing to do with regards to not being tone deaf, if I heard somebody else, to what's going on around us and in between us. But we also, this is a business too, and how do we sustain it for the long haul? So again, that we're not here always having to use layoffs as an option. to get us out of a fiscal issue, is where I'm coming from with that.
Certainly, Ms. Sims won't never imply that you don't care about these workers. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think unless there's any other comments or questions, if this moves forward, we need a motion. Ms. Ford, did you have a comment?
I do have a comment. I mean, if it's, of course, it's up to you, Ms. Capps, but I just wondered if anyone else wanted to speak who put this all together for us. They want to respond to any of the comments that were made.
Certainly, Mr. Matsuoka.
So, board, I have managed many difficult conversations and processes over my 14 years. And I have learned that if there isn't board support, that there does not need to be a motion. You can, and then people can vote, but I mean, this is not hard to discern. You do not want to take action on the restructuring and the layoffs. You've made that very clear. And so here's my response, more to the answers that I am hearing from you as our school board. We've presented this in various forms 4 times. First 2 were around the programs, the last 2 are around the structural deficit issue. You know, we still believe in these recommendations, but if you're not ready to move forward, then I don't believe you should take action. I don't believe there needs to be a motion. Because the answer that you're saying to me as your superintendent with our team is, no, we don't want to do this. And so we're going to take that direction right now. You're saying, please, we do not want to move forward with restructuring and layoffs. That just want you to realize that is the message that we have been receiving for the last, you know, honestly, 4 or 5 months. And so at this point, to go back and, you know, put together another iteration of this, I don't think is the right use of our time. And certainly the board energy. We got a lot more coming at us next 2 months. And so here's what I would offer. You've given us lots of feedback. We'll work on those ideas behind the scenes. But I'd like to put this issue aside because I want to take our energy, and you're going to see in the report at the end of the meeting the things that we need to start thinking about around reopening the school models. I want to take our cabinet energy and start looking to the future. The couple of actions that maybe the board could consider is I would recommend a hiring freeze on food service employees. We're overstaffed. So as we, you know, have some gradual attrition, that we're not going to hire those positions back in. It may take us years to get to that recommended staffing. But I hope you can support a freeze because nobody's losing their job. These are people who gradually attrition out. Because here's the other dilemma. If we don't start to restructure, we're left with one manager supervising 123 people, which is, that's just not a good structure. We could just hire 2 managers. You know, we're already losing money. We could hire 2 more and make the financial problem worse short term with the goal of running a better, more efficient department. I'm kind of torn on that because I don't like spending money that there isn't an income source for it. But maybe over time, as we gradually attrition down, if we can do a hiring freeze, then maybe we can hire 1 additional manager just to start getting in a management layer over time. So those are my comments, responses to your deliberations. Board, you're sending a very clear answer that you don't want to move forward, and we accept that. Ms. Ford.
Ms. Ford.
Thanks. Mr. Matsuoka, were you I appreciate you're reading the crowd here. Were you suggesting possibly that we vote for a hiring freeze across the district?
No, just on food service.
I'm confused as to.
And
is
by
that
the
on
way,
table? I mean, I don't think that seems like new information. I don't think anyone's suggesting hiring more.
yeah.
Food service
Well,
workers.
you asked for, Ms. Sims-Moden asked what tangible steps can we do? By the way, a hiring freeze doesn't require a board resolution,
Right.
a board vote. We just simply staff to what we need. And so, I mean, if we don't bring recommendations for appointments for food service positions, we will gradually, attrition our way down to what we need to. I'm just putting out the concept that, okay, I thought about this going into tonight. So what's plan B? Well, plan B is really slow, but it means as people gradually leave, we don't fill them until we get down to the number of, it's about 98 or 100. It could take 2 or 3 years, but that's a tool. I'm just trying to figure out how can we get some help for our one director. The idea of him supervising that many people is just, it's not a good solution for our food service program.
Can I ask a question?
Dr. Reed, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering why we weren't brought forward in that discussion about hiring the director, that we would need additional managers. I don't remember that in the conversation. So I guess when the initial discussion came forward about hiring a director of food services, and maybe I missed it, which I could have possibly done, but I don't remember that there was any information put forward that we were going to need to hire additional managers to support the director. It was more like we need to get our structure and systems set up because they weren't successful and they were causing us to have the losing of money so dramatically. So when was that brought forward?
Well, I'll tell you how this evolved over time. Or Meg, do you want to? Would you like a moment?
Yeah, when back in November when we first discussed this and we went through my initial analysis, I realized a few things, that we were losing money on some of the vendors. Ms. Capps is right. We were making a small profit off of CAC, but losing on CAC Head Start. So we were losing money on vendors. We were overstaffed, and some of our managers in our own kitchens, when I was visiting them, would tell me that right off the bat. We're overstaffed. Santa Maria was overstaffed. We lost 3 or 4 people at Santa Maria. We did not fill those positions. We have not filled anyone who leaves. We have not filled a position since November 1. So we've been on kind of a hiring freeze because right off the bat, we knew we were overstaffed. But Ms. Reed, Dr. Reed, what we talked about back in November on some of those other correspondence, we talk about managers because it's an impossibility to manage in such a high, in the kitchens, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. We have a lot of workers' comp claims in kitchens because we have slip and falls. We have all of these things that happen and they're not trained properly. And we need so many things to do in our kitchens, that to have managers there actively managing those kitchens and running them like professional, not that our managers aren't doing a good job, I'm not saying that, but that can supervise and direct and evaluate and train our employees is much needed. And I believe CSEA would agree that sometimes that isn't happening in our kitchens. So that was brought forward. It wasn't a lengthy time. We didn't spend a lot of time on it because I was trying to get other things done with the vendors and the vended programs. And so it wasn't brought really strongly forward, but it's something that I've always thought about and had talked to other directors about, that if they could blow up their whole food service department and actually put managers in there, and they would love to do that. because some have the principals do it, but our principals are already overloaded. We're not going to add, you know, another 11 food service workers on their plate. Another thing that I wanted to say is you mentioned several times about the CARES Act. Well, we are receiving 1.8 million, but that's not for food service. That's for preparation of the COVID, all the COVID things that we've had to do in design of the planning of the COVID. But I am in contact with Salud Carvajal's office, and we're in communication, and a draft bill came out today. I haven't seen it yet. They're analyzing it and they're getting to us, but hopefully there's some money in that. But the CARES Act does not have that in it, the initial CARES Act. So
it had 8.9 billion for food service departments.
I didn't see that. When I looked at the CARES Act, it says 1.8 million coming to Santa Barbara, and I gave a list of what we could spend it on, and that was for food service planning for COVID, but not actually for food service. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, and again, we need clarification. This is a separate pot, but it said specifically in the CARES Act, I read it, 9 billion nationally for food service. If that's on top of the 2 million that we're getting, great. Let's clarify that.
Yes. Because I haven't heard anything like that. And I've stuck my nose out there a lot to find out and ask for money for food service.
Yep. Thank you, Meg. Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I'm trying to synchronize a lot of the information I'm hearing and the opinions that have been shared. I think, it's very clear to me that a lot of work has gone into this, and there are so many tasks underway for this team to try to improve food services and fix what was broken and enhance what can still be done, that I think for me, I definitely could approve the creation of 2 manager positions to make sure that this work starts to happen and is more equally distributed. And then perhaps we could consider further restructuring after all of the tasks that are underway are accomplished, because the board is saying loud and clear that in addition to all of the strategies that Ms. Jate brought forth months ago and all the new ones that are in place now, we're asking for creative ways and better ways to distribute meals and feed more students. It seems to me with 2 additional managers, perhaps that will just give more support to this issue going forward, and then we could address further restructuring. That's the way I would look at it.
I appreciate that construct. Dr. Reed.
I want to speak to what Ms. Sims-Moten said, and also in terms of what the district is saying, that we need a system in place and we need to stop losing money, and we need structures in place. And I don't want to feel like we're just going to stop and do nothing and then just not take some movement forward to really look at how we can make the changes, because I think a lot of these systems that you're suggesting are, I think, viable. I agree with the idea that I totally don't think we need 6 managers. I think that doesn't make sense to me. I think that bringing in 2 managers and having actually their input with the director of food services and looking at the situation and being more diving deeper into the weeds about this with fresh eyes could be really a possibility of looking at new creative ways of making changes within this food services. So I guess what I would say is I would also support bringing forward 2 managers to bring in new perspectives and to see how we might make changes in the system. but I will stand that I don't agree that it should come at the loss of our essential workers, the workers that are doing the food in the food services currently, that I would not want to see us having to lay them off when we still don't know even the answers of this CARES Act, that maybe there is more money, maybe there's other opportunities. I just feel it's so fluid. Things are changing all the time. So those are my thoughts.
I'd just like to say one more thing, that it is important that we get money from the federal government for relief during this COVID issue. But as Ms. Sims-Moten said, once this is all over and we're back to normal, you know, we still are overstaffed no matter what. So that's just the last thing I'll say about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for saying that. I think that what we're hearing is wanting to move forward with management positions potentially, but as Dr. Becchio, I believe, said in the last meeting, it could be that if you hire a manager from within, then somebody who is that is under discussion or currently now for food service could actually move up. I mean, we could just see, I think the point is more of a comprehensive plan, and we are in this situation. We don't know how long it is. So we are taking things as they are now. And we're in this crisis moment where one of the chief responsibilities of our district is to try to figure out creatively how to feed kids who aren't getting the food like they used to get food. And so I think it's just a timing issue. Not necessarily, I don't think the consensus should be taken, oh, we don't want, you know, we don't see that there's a need to make some structural changes. That shouldn't be the message here. The message is we do understand that there needs to be some structural changes, just not in the sequence that this has been presented. Ms. Munoz.
Yes, and I think that, you know, I do see a lot of work has been put into this, and we've talked about, you know, the problems with the finances behind food services and such. We've talked about that for months. I just feel like, you know, we have food service employees that are CSCA, you know, under the union, that if there is a look at, for example, better communication, transparency, what training can happen with those employees, you know, for food prep, safety training and such, and looking at it as a structural improvement in terms of where can there be, you know, where are we overstaffed? How could we do this better? And I feel like, you know, the manager positions, I'd want to know more about how that would work before we implement it, and what would it look like financially if we don't. We've talked about what the budget would be if employers are laid off and then the managers are hired, but we haven't talked about what would be the dollars if the employees are retained and then we add managers on top of that. It's something that you know, that's where I feel like it's been rushed, that in 2 weeks, you know, and basically like I said, the job description was just given to us a few hours ago, and has that been shared, you know, with by the, you know, food services director with CSCA, how can this work better? I've been in organizations, I've been in 3 actually, one that just barely, you know, completed a org study. We had someone study it as to how can we work more productively and within a budget where it's more systematic. It's not that I'm against, you know, having anything happen to be responsible board members to our school district, but I just feel like that more conversation, more communication needs to happen. And I appreciate, you know, I know that my fellow board members have, you know, also concern about this. So that's, you know, what I'd like to see happen.
Thank you, Ms. Munoz. I believe that we've probably covered all aspects of this conversation tonight. I don't want to cut anybody off, but I would love to move us forward if we can move forward. And that would be not moving forward on this agenda item, but actually moving to the next section. Ms. Sims-Moten.
Yeah, I thought with Ms. Ford, were you trying to put an alternative action with regards to what's on the floor to make an amendment to the action, Ms. Ford?
Well, I was. Ms. Capps, I wonder if I could make a motion and see if there's any support for it.
Go for it, sure.
I'd like to make a motion to, at this time, to approve the creation of 2 manager positions for food service.
I second that motion.
Ms. Sims Moten, seconds. Any discussion on this new motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Do we need a roll call? I can't see what Ms. Munoz.
No.
Okay, so we have, we have 4 of us in favor and Ms. Munoz opposed. Is that accurate? Just making sure I understand the waves here.
And can I just add, Ms. Capps, just to get for clarity in terms of we're taking action on adding 2 managers, we're taking on layoffs. We're not doing any of that right now. We're taking on action on 2 managers. So if that makes it a little bit more, Ms. Munoz, with regards to what action we're actually taking is on to add the managers to strengthen the structure, to start to look at the things we just talked about in terms of how do we do better, how can we better train, and all those sense of that. So just that what Ms. Ford is saying in terms of that action.
Yes, no, I appreciate that, Ms. Sims. I don't feel that I'm able to vote on that. Thank you, though. Thank you respectfully.
Good clarification. Okay, well, that motion then stands with a vote of 4-1, and the motion carries. Thanks to everybody for a robust conversation and working through some really challenging things. I appreciate the honesty and the care that each and every person has for not only the people who serve the food, but the kids who eat it every day. So thanks, everybody. And with that, we're going to take I have 8:34. Let's come back at 8:45, a little restroom break, and we'll come back at 8:45 for the next part of the agenda. Thanks so much. Okay, let's see. I think we're all back. Let's move forward. I'm having a hard time getting my agenda up, but I believe the next item on the agenda, is it Tatum property or is it, okay, great. So we have Mr. Price ready. Great.
Mr. Price is ready.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. We are moving on to our report discussion section where we just have 2 remaining items, and the first is the Tatum property. So I believe I turn it over to Mr. Price, or Mr. Matsuoka, do you want to introduce it?
Yeah, let me give you some some comments, and then we'll turn it over to Mr. Price. And this will be really another chance for the board to ask questions and learn about this project. I wrote in the cover memo that Mr. Price, correct me if I'm off on how long. I think it's been a 10-year effort. This goes back a long, long time. This property is a great resource, and we want to utilize it on behalf of the district. You've read my argument about a land lease versus outright sale many times. It's been very clear with the board that we want to hold on to that capital investment because it will generate value over time. Now, none of us will be here at the end of 99 years, but we are hopefully handing off a legacy of a financial income stream that over time will just be really, really helpful. Mr. Price has been involved in this project probably since its inception across maybe even 3 superintendents. And I think you all know how much he does for our district, but just navigating the water use rights was a battle. I mean, we had to go to court over that. Kachuma had to be a certain level before they would grant us water rights. The land use has been worked through with the county supervisors over the last decade. So we are poised to have the board take action on the land lease document. It's a significant culmination of a long effort. Now, it's going to be a fact-finding mission for this development company to see if they can make it work. But it's on their dime. It's not on mine. So that's really, really helpful. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Price, and he'll offer his comments. And mostly we're here to answer questions.
Well, thank you very much, Carrie. It's actually been a 16-year quest, started in 2004 during Dr. Sarvis's tenure. And over this lengthy period of time, there has been a very large effort to find the right use that would be consistent with the values of the district, the right partner who could bring it forward, and the right financial return that could maximize what it is that you are all seeking to do, and that is to augment general fund revenue. And so without discoursing over the last 16 years, I can simply reiterate that it is very exciting for us working with Carrie and Meg and staff over the last, I don't know, with this particular development group over the last year and a half or so, to develop and bring forward an agreement that we think is not only in the best interest of the district, but is in the exceptional interest of the district. We have needed to get the right zoning in place over the years. We have needed to find the right use. Senior housing, something very much needed that is consistent with board values. And we've needed to develop a partnership that will predictably be able to bring in successfully a maximum return for the district. And we think that we've been able to accomplish this. And so at the end of months and months of difficult but very friendly negotiations with the developer, we bring forward this option agreement and a long-term lease. And in addition, I would only want to comment that although it will be some period of time before real substantial revenues are enjoyed, the revenue stream that has been agreed upon with this lease, as opposed to some fixed amount with a COLA every year, is tied to 7% of the gross revenues that the development will return, which we believe has the potential of maximizing the district revenues over time to a much greater amount than conventional lease agreements that school districts and other municipal agencies have traditionally entered into. So it's been a tough but friendly negotiation. We've arrived at this point so that you can preview the documentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Gosh, 16 years. Thank you for how you've shepherded this forward, and this is an exciting place to be. I want to turn it over to the board for any comments or questions. And I also just want to appreciate that this is a report and we're not taking a vote. I always just acknowledge that that means you've gotten things to us in time, and so we can actually sort of have the moment for this discussion before taking final action at the future meeting. So thank you for that. Any questions or comments? Ms. Ford.
Thanks. I was just going to try to clarify. Would the idea be then for the next meeting for us to approve these lease agreements, or the lease and the option agreement?
Yes.
Yep. No, I thought it was, I think it's very easy to follow. We've had a number of reports about it, and I have no questions.
Excellent. Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just wanted to also just acknowledge Mr. Price and his longevity on this course of action, and also Mr. Matsuoka for really working and making this happen too. I think, your leadership on this has been great, and the process, having been involved in it in the last 3.5 years, has been every piece of information. And as we move forward, it's been something that I've gotten more and more excited about. And I think it offers a wonderful opportunity for our district. So thank you both. And I'm excited about moving forward.
One more comment, if I could make, because Dr. Reed mentioned Dr. Matsuoka's involvement. And I will say over the last, at least 2 years, Kara's involvement has been way beyond amazing in terms of seeing the end zone as we have worked through many difficult issues. And I don't believe without his leadership and direction on this endeavor that we would be where your board is tonight.
I'm sorry. Ms. Sims-Moten.
No problem. For once, I'm unmuted and you didn't hear me. No. No, thank you, Ms. Gass. I just want to echo the comments of the board members too. 3 years ago, we were like, what are we doing? What are we trying to do? And we definitely from Mr. Matsuoka and Craig steering us through it and answering our questions of, we really don't know what we're looking at, and trusting, your leadership on this and being very clear all the way through, so that we are at this point where you have minimal questions, because the questions along the way that we had were answered in our lack of understanding, just because we were new at it, has now gained to like, oh, we get that, we understand that. And just appreciate what you just said about the negotiations were tough but friendly. And I could appreciate that. And so being that and standing firm on what the district needs, and to make sure that we have the maximum outcome that we can, and that you also took into consideration our comments and put them in here, and we're seeing them with regards to this today. So thank you again. Thank you both for steering us to this point.
Well said, Ms. Sims-Moten. Okay, any other comments or questions? Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I appreciate, as my colleagues are saying, and as we've seen, when Kate and I got on the board, this had already been reviewed right thoroughly for years and so forth, and all of the thoughtful decisions in terms of how it's going to impact the neighborhood, how it's going to benefit our students with the financial assistance from that is tremendous. I think it's an excellent project, and I certainly appreciate everybody's efforts in it. As I had said in a previous board meeting, I had asked about we've talked about the high cost of living in Santa Barbara, and I had previously asked about any consideration for setting aside, a small percentage of the units for affordable for folks that are on a lower income. And then also we have talked about it incorporating possibly in the future a license for assisted living home. And as someone who works with this on a day-to-day basis, nowadays, if someone has a low income, they need to be placed in LA County. Kern County is the closest with programs that have affordable assisted living for their loved ones. So I would want to ask, I know other building in the city and so forth, I believe has like a 10%, rate that they set aside for folks that can't afford the higher rate in terms of a living and accommodation. So I would want to ask if that could be considered in this.
When you refer to assisted living, that can mean, and I'm not sure if I'm addressing where you're going with this, people that have healthcare needs beyond what are able to be accommodated in restricted senior housing. And I would just indicate very briefly that there is a plan to develop 9 acres of the total 24 acres into a memory care assisted living adjoining facility. But in terms of dealing with what I'll just call low-cost housing or assisted living from the standpoint of rental help, the developer, who is very experienced in these things and actually one of the top 50 housing owners in the United States, it just happens to be based through the ownership here in Santa Barbara, will be undertaking the effort from this point forward to work with the County of Santa Barbara and go through all of the processes that are involved, as you're all aware, of course, are lengthy, complex in terms of getting the approvals that are necessary. And in discussions that we have had with the developer, I know that they understand the desire that you've just expressed. Ms. Munoz, we brought it up with them, and I know that they're going to pursue that in the development implementations that they have with the county.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, and as you said, the assisted living is that leveled. Folks that do not, if it's not the the convalescent hospitals that we have several of here in town, it's a lower, one level lower, where they do need assistance and are licensed assisted care facilities. So I appreciate that in consideration, and also for the the senior apartments, because we do have such a concern about that here in Santa Barbara County. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks for that point. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Price, we didn't keep you too late here. I think we're good for now, and we look forward to bringing this back for a vote.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Good to see you. Okay, moving on to our last item for report and discussion, because we've already done the superintendent search update, and that is to Mr. Matsuoka for the update on responding to COVID-19.
So, am I muted or not?
You're good.
I'm good. Okay. All right. So this always comes together by Tuesday early afternoon. I know the board is always, pressured and rushed to get to it. It's just that the writing, most of it happened last night, and then the review of it by cabinet and SBT leadership took place today. Rather than, well, it's a different report than the past ones, because we are starting to turn our thoughts more towards the future instead of current and the past. You'll see the notes about high school senior celebrations. Know that your high school teams are planning extensively. There is a comment about a minimalist summer school and our reasons for it. We actually have prepared a version of this report. It's going to go out tonight. It's been translated. And we wanted to definitively state that the first day of school is staying put. We wanted to counter some of the concerns about, what Gavin Newsom said about, well, maybe we're going to start school earlier. So we're going to put that out tonight. I hope that helps our staff and our parents plan well during the summer. What is certainly on people's minds is how are we going to do school next year? And so we have been doing some thinking and some writing at the cabinet level. I took, I guess, my personal opinions and put them on paper about 3 scenarios, and hopefully you had a chance to read them. We're currently living scenario 1, which is full distance learning. Here's my statement. I'll say it on the Zoom, and it's in my letter. I think the chances of us transitioning to a brick and mortar experience on August, what's the date? First day of school, August 18th, I think is going to be really difficult. I think we're going to open school under a scenario 1, and we'll have some improvements we'll need to think through. Scenario 2 is where it gets really challenging to think through about how do you use the blend of school facilities and our staff while trying to maintain distance learning, or social distancing standards. And just some of the challenges of, imagine a high school of 2,000 kids. We just can't have them all in a classroom at the same time. Someday scenario 3 will be wonderful. I think there will be a celebration across the community, both parents and students. But I think that's a long way off pending a vaccine. So we did want to share that we have opened, I'll call it, negotiations with our teachers union around that scenario 2. It would be a significant change in work conditions, and we just thought we might as well sit down with our union leaders and start thinking this through. We have a really good relationship with our union, and so this will be an opportunity to plan collaboratively. We think that work's going to take every bit of our energy for the next until mid-June. I do feel like this team's going to need a break, and then the planning will resume in mid-July. The next 2 items, there's data about food services. We've already commented that. There's a really great pandemic electronic banking card. It's like a debit card that's going to be sent out to families that already qualify for free and reduced lunch. And we're doing all that we can to get the word out about that. Know that the next board meeting, we're going to bring you your first glimpse of next year's budget. And I think it's going to be a mix of good news and bad news, challenges and opportunities. I think we're all realizing that we're going to face some of the hardest economic conditions of our lifetime. And finally, we'll start putting this report in, the percent of students that are checking in remotely. We'll do that every Friday. So that's a quick overview. Be glad to take questions from the board.
Any questions? Thank you for that, Mr. Matsuoka. Ms. Ford.
I am worried just personally about not really knowing what's happening, other than some general statements about graduation, and now it's just a few weeks away. And I do appreciate that there's a committee that is working hard. I would like to know when we will actually know what the plans are and what's being done, and also how the board can be involved.
I'll offer some opening comments, and then Ms. Carey has been running that committee. In fact, they had a meeting, I think they had a meeting today. I'm waiting for her to show up. There she is. Oh, she's got to unmute. They're working hard on it, and we are ready to invite the board to participate in these events. We just need to get the details figured out.
And I'll also potentially invite Cammie to speak, because she and I have, she has largely prepped the communication that we plan to roll really tonight or within the next 24 hours. In our meeting today with high school principals, we just wanted to make sure that they could message their own school communities before our centralized messaging got out ahead of their messaging. So all of that is queued up and going to be pushed out in the next 24 hours. And no later than Friday, depending. All the 4 high schools are in a little bit different stages of planning details. So that is right there.
Yeah, I would love to add one thought on that. And Kate, I appreciate your question. And we've been hearing from lots of people that want answers. I think one of the concerns has been that ideas were developed, and then you must submit them to the county public health folks, who then give you feedback and send you back to the drawing board. And it becomes a back and forth that I think has been, a process that maybe has been more time consuming than we realized. And it could be something as simple as, oh, we'd like to have this event on this day in this venue with these folks. And then we submit and they give feedback and they say, you can do that portion, but not that portion. And it's been an ongoing process. So it's not that they don't have a lot of great ideas. It's more just getting one that gets that stamp of approval across the board. And then more recently, these guidelines that were given to us, I think I just saw them a few days ago. I don't know if others saw them before me, but they were specific to graduation ceremonies.
Those guidelines came the end of last week, so we just got them.
Right. So we were really waiting on some of that to just make sure that we could, go forward and make sure everyone was safe and that we were going to be able to execute this really well with, no hitches. But that's why you haven't heard anything. And I'm literally formulating something right now that you'll see soon. So thank you.
Okay, I mean, I just concur too. It'd be great when there are details to know them and of course, board involvement. Other questions or comments? Yeah, Dr. Reed.
Yeah, I just wanted, I appreciate that transparency, Cami, to just understand about the back and forth process, because I'm sure that's been very challenging, and Ms. Carey. And so it's good to hear what's actually happening and what you're grappling with. And I think also it's really, I will also acknowledge Superintendent Matsuoka, the reports and how important they are. They really, and I appreciate you waiting actually to the last minute, because I know you're getting last minute information. So I appreciate that transparency and trying to, and the scenarios. It's just crazy to think we're in this new normal and how it's going to actually evolve and where we're going with that. And I know a lot of thoughtful discussions, robust discussions have happened around this as well. And I just want you to know that I appreciate that. And I think we have to take in effect that this is fluid. It's changing all the time. And for example, you just got this information on graduation. So, I mean, like, what can you do? This is what it is. So any time when you know information, I know your work is to let us know as quickly as possible so that we can be a part of it. And I agree with Ms. Ford. I'm really wanting to be involved in some way, whatever that might be. So thank you, and for keeping us abreast of it as it happens on the fly sometimes. Thank you.
I want to confirm that the committee discussed today the involvement of board members, and did like to trust that there would be interest in being involved. So we are planning for that as well.
Thank you, Ms. Carey. Other comments or questions? Ms. Ford.
Thank you. I appreciated the parent square and the notice we got from Ms. Barnwell about the issues around suicide and especially the mental health of our young adolescents. And I just wondered if Ms. Wagner, if you could talk to us a little bit about what your support staff is doing to reach out to kids who are struggling. What are counselors up to these days, and how are we supporting kids during this very difficult time?
Oh, we could spend an hour on that, but I'll try to synthesize. So almost from the get-go, in fact, from the get-go, both CALM and FSA, they didn't just continue the services that they were providing, they ramped up, and they actually, both organizations hired more staff to address the needs. And so FSA and CALM, they've added, obviously they're doing the telehealth type one-on-one counseling, but they're they set up support for parents and teachers. And then talking about specifically our own staff, Ali Cortez, who works in student services and is a MFT. She's been everywhere. supporting not just her own 80 students that she supports throughout the year, but involving herself with groups that need services. And then we talk about the school counselors. The school counselors, I meet with the high school counselors every Monday morning, and then we meet as a whole group on Fridays. And they are just constantly communicating with students. Not only are they responding to students who reach out to them, but they spent a lot of the first 2-3 weeks doing that work of tracking down students who weren't participating, checking in on the students they were most worried about. And so everyone's just very, very busy. But we did see an increase in the number of suicide attempts in a short period of time. And that's what led us to form this group and go back to the simple acronym of ACT, which is acknowledge, show care, and tell a trusted adult. And so team of about 25 people put together the campaign to reach out to our staff too, to reach out to educators, because our teachers are struggling right now because they're working so hard, but also to the students through the video. And then we'll, next week we'll be sending you, or later this week, there's a video specifically being sent out to parents about what they can do and what they can look for to support their youth. Because what we're hearing, and I had a meeting with FSA today, is that students are tired of this and the computer. Parents are reporting and students are reporting that they're shutting their electronics off and they miss each other. And so helping parents know what to do and to see the signs of depression in their kids and get help. So there's also been an outpouring just in our community of just everyone in the mental health community is really ramped up. So a lot going on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Wagnick. Ms. Munoz, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you, Fran. I so much appreciate you. I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing coordinating with the community. Thank you so much. We have, as you said, like we're just hearing so much about kids getting depressed and just the stress of being at home, having their, being there 24/7 and feeling isolated from their peers. So I really appreciate that. I want to show you everybody my shirt. I wore it in honor of of May being, suicide prevention month, when you and I were out at the walk about a year ago, and just keeping that in mind. I really, the stress, and like you said, like the involvement with the teachers and the counselors that are out there in the community. I'm on a weekly conference call with others that are out there, and we have Ismael Huerta, who's with the school district, and Peggy Ochoa, elected officials and community members that are seeing that we were initially more concerned about, like the violence that was surging in the community. And our current concern is, like you said, is the depression in our youth. And it's going to be a long road. So thank you so much. And anything that, if anyone wants to get involved, let me know. and so forth. And I really appreciate, the support of my fellow school district and such. And thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ms. Munoz. Any other questions or comments about the report, about COVID response, anything else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Matsuoka and all of the team. I know this represents a lot of work and a lot of people's work. And thank you for doing these regular reports like this. as the world continues to change and evolve. So we are actually moving along. It's only 9:18. It's a little stunning to be at the end of our meeting here. A little shock value happening. Okay, I think that I'm having a hard time pulling up my agenda, but I believe that we're at the end of the line, which is a good thing for the fellow board members because we will be spending several hours together, if not 10 this weekend on a very exciting stage of the superintendent search, as was mentioned. So that's our next board meeting, which is of course a closed session because it is interviewing candidates directly on Zoom. That's the 16th and 17th, and then we resume in a full regular board meeting on May 26th. Again, thank you to all, to the members of the community that have watched and hung in here with us, the members of the community have spoken, and to the staff and the team and the board. With that, I will adjourn the meeting unless there's any objections. Seeing none. Oh, Ms. Sims-Moton.
Oh, I was just going to say yay, and I was just going to say I appreciate the board discussion and deliberation today. I know it was difficult, but I'm glad we got to some action. So I just want to express my appreciation to that. Keep us moving forward. So I appreciate the conversation we had today.
Hear, hear. Okay. Thanks for saying that. Okay, Dr. Reed, Ms. Ford, everybody's doing the whatever, Zoom, virtual high fives all around. Okay, thanks everybody. Meeting is adjourned.